Here is Section 1, Opening Hooks, 900 words, sharp, emotional, cinematic, no fluff. Pure storytelling. No headings inside. Tone. Suspenseful plus romantic plus underdog energy plus CEO mystery. Section 1. Opening hooks, 900 words. Everyone in the building was rushing. Phones ringing, heels clicking, managers shouting orders across the marble lobby. But she moved like a quiet breeze through chaos. Soft steps, lowered eyes, clutching her intern badge as if it were borrowed time. Mira. The girl no one noticed, no one greeted, no one cared to understand. That morning, she struggled to carry a stack of documents nearly half her height. People brushed past her as if she were invisible until the corner of one folder slipped. A gust of cold air from the revolving door sent the entire stack flying across the lobby floor like scattered feathers. Everyone stepped around her. Everyone looked away. Everyone pretended it wasn't their problem. Except him. He knelt down, dressed in the plain gray uniform of a new junior employee, sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled as if he'd hurried out of some ordinary bus ride. He gathered the papers silently, not saying a word, just offering her a calm, steady presence. She blinked, stunned. No one ever helped her. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible. He looked up and froze. Adrian's heartbeat slammed against his ribs. He had seen thousands of faces. He had rejected hundreds of job candidates. He had ignored hundreds of people who tried to impress him. His world was numbers, efficiency, flawless deals, and a reputation sharp enough to make executives tremble. But this girl, with her scared eyes and shaking hands, pierced right through him. He didn't know her, yet he felt like he'd been waiting for her. "Careful," he murmured, handing her the last sheet. "They love blaming interns for everything." She gave a small nervous smile, the kind she rarely showed anyone. "I know." Her voice was soft. Too soft for this merciless corporate jungle. Adrian stood up, but inside, something in him stayed on his knees. He watched her hurry away, hugging the papers to her chest, trying not to draw attention. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know that the man who just helped her wasn't really an employee at all.
He was the CEO.
The cold, unreachable, feared CEO. The one everyone whispered about in elevators. The one whose footsteps made directors sit straighter. The one whose name alone made people edit their emails twice. But today, that CEO wasn't standing at the top floor in his private office. Today, Adrian Kane had disguised himself as a regular worker, simple shirt, fake ID, no driver, no security detail, just to see the truth inside his empire. Because rumors of corruption were spreading. Money missing. Interns mistreated. Supervisors taking bribes. And no one dared complain, because complaining meant blacklisting. Adrian needed eyes on the ground. He never expected those eyes to belong to a girl who looked like she hadn't been seen her whole life. He followed her from a distance, keeping his disguise intact. She walked into the elevator carefully, making space for everyone, shrinking herself so others felt comfortable. Only when she thought no one was watching did she release a tiny sigh, one that sounded like exhaustion, or fear, or both. He pressed into the same elevator. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him again, then she quickly looked at the floor. She didn't want to bother anyone. She never assumed she mattered enough to be noticed twice. For a moment, the elevator was silent, just the hum of machinery. Then her folder slipped again, and she scrambled to stop the papers from falling. Adrian reached out instantly, steadying her hand. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded quickly, as if even needing help was a sin. "Sorry." "You don't need to apologize for breathing," he said quietly. Her breath caught.
People didn't talk to her that way.
The doors opened at the 14th floor. She stepped out. He stayed inside, but his eyes followed her until she disappeared behind a sea of cubicles. And the moment she vanished, he exhaled a breath that wasn't supposed to matter. He was here for business. Investigation. Corruption. He wasn't here to be drawn to someone. Yet the image of her shy smile burned in his mind like a stubborn echo. His undercover day continued. Managers shouted. Employees whispered. Rumors flew. People gossiped about layoffs and interns being scapegoats. Adrian listened closely, pretending to type as he observed everything. But every few minutes, his gaze drifted across the room to search for her. He found her again during lunch. Mira sat alone in a corner of the cafeteria, eating cheaply packed rice she must have cooked at home. She kept her head low while a group of flashy interns bragged loudly about their monthly allowances, mocking poor interns who couldn't even afford cafeteria food. She smiled faintly, pretending not to care. Adrian clenched his jaw. He walked toward her without thinking, tray in hand, and sat across from her. She jumped slightly. "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this table was." "I like quiet corners," he said. "And your table seems to be the only place without people pretending to be rich." Her lips trembled into a tiny laugh. "You notice that too?" "I notice everything," he said. And he did. He noticed the calluses on her fingers. Hard work. He noticed the second-hand watch. Budgeted life. He noticed the way she checked her phone twice, worried her mother might need her. He noticed the courage it took her to wake up every day in a world determined to crush soft people. She wasn't invisible. She was surviving. He watched her carefully, wondering how someone like her ended up in a place so cruel. "First day?" she asked him gently. "Yeah." He couldn't say, "Actually, I own the building." "Don't worry," she said softly. "It gets easier. Just keep your head down." He looked at her like she had just told him the saddest truth in the world. Her whole life was about keeping her head down. He wanted to lift her chin. In that moment, Adrian made a silent promise to himself. Before he left this floor, before he revealed who he was, before this whole undercover operation ended, he would make sure the girl who lived like a shadow finally learned what it felt like to be seen and loved. From that first moment in the lobby, he already knew he couldn't stop himself. Here is Section 2. Opening hooks, 900 words, deep emotion, sharp storytelling, no fluff, pure cinematic flow. Tone. Quiet pain, underdog struggle, hidden CEO watching, soft romantic tension. Section 2. Opening hooks, 900 words. The office was loud, but she was always quiet. Mira slipped through the maze of cubicles like she was trying not to disturb the air itself. Her footsteps made no sound. Her presence barely registered. She was so used to being overlooked that she moved like a shadow, light, soft, invisible. But to him, she glowed. From his desk 3 rows away, Adrian kept stealing glances at her while pretending to type on his borrowed workstation. Her desk was tiny, squeezed between towering filing shelves as if the company had run out of space and decided she didn't need any.
She didn't complain.
She simply worked, fast, precise, disciplined. But her hands trembled. Not from fear, no. From exhaustion. He noticed every detail. It was impossible not to. He watched how she arrived 15 minutes early, organizing her desk like it was a sacred ritual. He saw how she rewrote meeting notes because someone had splashed coffee on them, someone who didn't even apologize. He also saw how her name was constantly forgotten. Intern, print this. Hey, you file these. Girl, copy those documents. Not once did anyone say, Mira. Only he whispered it in his mind, tasting it like a secret he wasn't ready to give back. At 10:05 a.m., the supervisor stormed in. High heels, loud perfume, and a personality sharp enough to slice the room in two. "Mira," she barked. Mira flinched as if hit. "Why, yes, ma'am." "You filed the documents incorrectly." Adrian lifted his head immediately. "Those documents?" He watched Mira file them herself.
Perfectly.
Methodically. With the kind of care people only gave to things they feared to lose. "They were in the exact order you instructed," Mira said, her voice tiny but firm. The supervisor slammed a folder on Myra's desk. "So, now you're arguing with me?" Mira swallowed her fear and shook her head. "No, I just meant, stop. Just stop. I can't handle incompetence." Adrian's hand curled around his pen. Incompetence? The only incompetent person here was the supervisor who hadn't touched paperwork in months. But Adrian bit his tongue. If he defended Mira openly, his cover might crack. and he couldn't risk exposing the rot in the company yet. Still, watching Mira fold in on herself like a wounded bird ignited something dangerous inside him. The supervisor marched away, heels stabbing the floor. Mira exhaled shakily and gathered the scattered pages, her fingers shaking. No one helped. No one asked if she was okay. No one cared. But Adrian stood. Quietly. He walked to her desk, pretending to search for the printer beside her. When she lifted her head, their eyes met. Her lashes fluttered. "Oh, hi.
Do you need something?
You didn't do anything wrong," he said quietly. Mira froze. No one else noticed, but he lowered his voice. "I watched you work. You did everything perfectly." Her lips parted slightly, as if someone had finally spoken a language she hadn't heard in years. "You noticed?" He nodded. "You're better than half this floor." Her throat tightened. She blinked fast, trying to hide the shine in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. 2 words. But to her, they were heavy, because she rarely heard them. And to him, they were dangerous, because they made him want to protect her more. He returned to his desk before anyone could see the tenderness in his eyes. Mira didn't know that the employee who noticed her was actually the man who controlled everyone's salary, promotion, and fate. But that same man would rather die than see her break. Around noon, another small moment caught his attention. Myra's stomach growled softly. She winced, quickly sipping water to hide it. She hadn't eaten breakfast. Adrian's jaw tightened. Her lunchbox today was even smaller than yesterday's, just a handful of rice and a boiled egg. She ate slowly, savoring each bite like a child afraid the food might disappear. Meanwhile, other interns tossed half their meals away while bragging about expensive restaurants. He wanted to walk over, sit beside her, and share his meal, but that would be too obvious. Still, his gaze kept drifting toward her, every bite, every sigh, every tired blink. Then something happened that made his pulse spike. A senior intern, loud, arrogant, always laughing at things that weren't funny, walked past Myra's desk with a cup of iced coffee. He swung his arm too wide, spilling coffee across her freshly printed reports.
Oh.
"My bad," he said casually, not even slowing down. Mira gasped, leaping to save the papers. Coffee soaked them brown, the ink smearing into unreadable marks. Adrian shot up from his chair. "How can you just walk away?" Mira asked the senior intern, voice trembling with frustration she rarely allowed herself to show. The senior turned, smirking.
Relax.
"You can just print them again." "That took me 3 hours," she whispered. "Then maybe work faster next time," he sneered. Adrian walked toward them before he could stop himself. "Hey," he said sharply. The senior intern rolled his eyes. "What do you want, Junior? You spilled the coffee. Apologize." The senior laughed. "Who are you, her babysitter?" Myra's eyes widened, silently pleading for Adrian not to escalate. She was afraid of creating enemies, afraid of being seen, afraid of losing her internship. Adrian took a slow breath. "You can't reveal yourself." "Not yet." He stepped in front of Mira subtly, shielding her without making a scene. "You don't have to apologize to me," Adrian said calmly. "Just to her." The senior scoffed and walked away. "Coward." Adrian turned to Mira, voice softening instantly. "Are you okay?" She nodded quickly, though her shoulders were shaking. "It's fine. I'll reprint everything." "It's not fine," he said, barely controlling the fire in his voice. "You deserve respect." She looked at him like he had just told her something impossible. Like respect was a luxury she had never been allowed to afford. "Thank you," she murmured again. How many times had she said those words today? As if gratitude was all she was allowed to offer. He wished she didn't thank him. He wished she demanded more. He wished she saw her own worth as clearly as he saw it. From his desk, he watched her dry the papers carefully, refusing to cry in front of anyone. Her strength was silent, but it roared inside him. She didn't know it yet, but the quiet girl who thought no one saw her was being watched by the one man whose eyes mattered most. And he wasn't just watching. He was falling. Here is Section 3. Opening hooks, 900 words, intense emotion, rising tension, no fluff, pure cinematic storytelling. Tone, protective CEO in disguise, injustice, growing bond, quiet love, suspense. Section 3. Opening hooks, 900 words. The office lights flickered overhead as evening settled, turning the glass windows into dark mirrors. Most employees had already left, escaping into the city night. But two shadows still remained under the pale glow of fluorescent bulbs, one small and weary, one tall and silently burning. Mira sat hunched at her desk, typing furiously, her fingers trembling from hours of exhaustion. She hadn't eaten since the tiny lunchbox. She hadn't stood up in hours. And she hadn't spoken since the coffee incident. But Adrian watched her. The disguise on his body felt heavier tonight, not because of the cheap uniform, but because he was holding back too much. Too many words. Too much anger. Too much protective instinct. Every time she blinked slowly, long, tired blinks that meant her vision was blurring, he felt his chest twist. It was nearly 9 p.m. when the incident happened. A senior manager stomped out of the elevator with a thundercloud on his face, clutching a stack of financial documents. His eyes landed on Mira instantly.
You.
Intern. She stiffened. Me? Yes, you. Who else would be sitting here this late? He snapped, letting the papers crash onto her desk. Print these, bind them, add labels, and put them in my office before midnight. Myra's eyes widened. All of this? Tonight? Yes, he barked. And don't mess it up like last time. But I didn't mess up last. He raised a hand. Do you want this internship or not? Her mouth closed. Her shoulders sank. Adrian stood up, so abruptly his chair nearly tipped backward. Last time? She had been perfect last time. He had seen the reports himself. The only mistake had been the manager giving her the wrong date, then blaming her for his own laziness. Adrian's fingers twitched with the urge to rip off his fake ID and show this man who he really was. But he took a breath, reminding himself, not yet. Not until you see the whole picture. Not until you uncover every crack in your company. Still, he couldn't let her drown alone. He approached quietly. Do you need help? Mira startled, blinking up at him with tired eyes that still managed to shine. No, you've done enough. You should go home. He shook his head. I'm not leaving you alone with all this. She bit her lip. I don't want you to get in trouble. He smiled faintly. Trouble is my specialty. She didn't know how true that was. They worked together in silence, printing, stapling, binding, labeling. Mira told him where supplies were kept, apologizing each time she spoke too long, as if her existence itself was an inconvenience. Adrian didn't interrupt. He didn't rush her. He simply worked beside her, matching her pace, making sure the heavy tasks fell onto him instead of her. But then came the moment that changed everything. One of the files was missing a crucial page. Not because of Mira. Because the manager had forgotten to give it to her. She panicked instantly, rummaging through folders, drawers, shelves. Her breath grew uneven. Her anxiety rose like a tide. No, he'll fire me. He'll say I'm careless again. Mira, Adrian said gently, placing a steadying hand on her arm. Breathe. She froze, his touch catching her completely off guard. Her heartbeat thudded wildly beneath his fingers. He withdrew his hand slowly, reluctantly, but his voice stayed soft. Let's find it together. They searched for 10 minutes.
20.
30. The clock struck 10 p.m. Myra's eyes grew glassy with frustration. It's missing. I know it's missing. He's going to blame you. Adrian finished for her. She swallowed hard. Yes. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Because blaming you is easy. You never fight back. Mira looked away, ashamed. I can't afford to lose this internship. He knew that. He had seen the cracked phone she hid behind her hand. The worn-out shoes she stitched herself. The cheap watch she adjusted every morning. She wasn't just working, she was surviving. Adrian found the missing page later, buried in the manager's own inbox tray. Of course. Mira gasped softly when he held it up. How did you find it? I look at details, he said simply. She took the page with trembling hands. Thank you. Really? As she finished binding the final stack, she inhaled shakily, gathering courage. You don't have to stay. It's my job. He met her eyes. Then let me do my job, he said softly. Keeping you from breaking. Her breath hitched. He didn't realize how raw those words were until he saw her expression, like no one had ever said anything so kind to her before. They walked together down the silent hallway to deliver the documents. The building felt darker at night, the shadows longer, the silence deeper. Mira stepped quietly beside him, as if afraid her footsteps would echo too loudly. At the manager's office, she placed the files neatly on the desk. She turned to leave, but a clicking sound stopped them. The office door opened. The manager stepped inside, startled to see them. His eyes narrowed instantly, landing on Mira like a predator finding prey. You're still here, he snapped. She stiffened. I finished the files, sir. Show me. He flipped through the documents slowly, searching for a mistake. Any mistake. Something to justify belittling her. Adrian watched him with silent intensity. Finally, the manager looked up. This page was missing earlier. Mira opened her mouth. Actually, she found it, Adrian said, stepping forward before she could blame herself for something she didn't do. In your inbox. The manager's jaw tightened. Anger flared in his eyes. You new guy, he hissed. Do you think you can talk to me like that? Adrian smiled, but it wasn't friendly. I talked to everyone with honesty. It took every ounce of his restraint not to reveal who he truly was.
Not yet.
Not until the entire rotten structure collapsed at his feet. The manager stormed away, muttering insults under his breath. Mira looked at Adrian with wide, frightened eyes. You shouldn't have talked back, he'll make your work harder tomorrow. Adrian shrugged. Let him try.
But...
Mira, he said softly. I don't care about him. Her breath caught. I care about you. Silence. Pure, fragile, electric silence. She lowered her gaze, cheeks growing warm. Why, she whispered. He couldn't say the real reason. He couldn't tell her he was the CEO of the entire building. He couldn't tell her he admired her strength, her kindness, her quiet resilience. He couldn't tell her he was falling deeper every hour. So he said the only truth he could share. Because you deserve someone on your side. Her eyes glistened. Thank you, she whispered again, but this time there was more behind it.
Trust.
Relief. Something fragile and blooming. Something dangerous. As they walked back to their desks, Adrian knew one thing with absolute certainty. Tonight wasn't the first time he protected her. And it wouldn't be the last. Because somewhere between the coffee spills, the late-night work, and the trembling smiles, he had crossed the line. He was no longer just watching her. He was falling for her. Hopelessly. Silently. And soon. Irrevocably. Here is Section 4, opening hooks, 900 words, heavy suspense, betrayal, power shift, emotional shock, CEO losing control. Tone. Darkening tension, corporate danger, intern in trouble, hidden CEO on the brink of revealing everything. White medium star Section 4, opening hooks, 900 words. The storm didn't start with thunder. It started with silence. A strange, suffocating silence that fell over the entire floor the next morning, an eerie quiet that made every employee type slower, breathe softer, glance nervously at the elevators. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Adrian felt it the moment he walked in, still disguised in his plain uniform. Whispers darted through the office, like poison-laced arrows. Did you hear? They're investigating interns. Someone leaked internal documents. And they're blaming the quiet one. The quiet one. His entire body went cold. Myra's desk was empty. Adrian's pulse spiked instantly, his steps quickening, cutting through panicked employees who gave him confused looks. His heart hammered with a fear he hadn't felt in years. Not for himself, but for her. Then he saw it. A small conference room at the end of the hallway. Glass walls. People inside. And, in the center, Mira. Small. Shaking. trying her best to remain composed as 3 senior managers cornered her with files and accusations. Adrian stopped in his tracks. What did they do to her? His throat tightened. He had gone undercover to expose corruption, but he never expected they'd drag her into the fire meant for them. He moved closer, fury burning hotter with every step. Inside, one manager slammed a stack of documents onto the table, making Mira jump. These files were leaked last week. Sensitive data. Financial projections. He leaned in, voice dripping venom. And your ID was the only one logged into the system that night. Myra's voice cracked. I didn't leak anything. I didn't even stay late that day. But they didn't care about truth. They cared about finding a scapegoat. A weak one. An invisible one. The perfect one. No more lies. Another manager snapped. Just admit it. You did it. I didn't. Enough. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. The glass wall felt too thin for the fury boiling inside him. He recognized the tactic. This wasn't an investigation. It was a setup. And he knew exactly why. Someone had discovered the CEO was walking among them, and they were panicking. Panicking enough to blame an innocent intern to cover their tracks. Adrian exhaled shakily, the rage pulsing under his skin like a living thing. He had promised himself he wouldn't reveal his identity yet. Not until he understood the entire web of corruption. Not until he had evidence. Not until he was ready. But when he saw the tears Mira was fighting so desperately to hide, his promise began to crumble. Inside the room, Mira wiped her eyes quickly. Please, I swear I didn't do anything wrong. A manager threw a printed log in front of her. You logged in from this computer. These documents were accessed under your name. Mira stared at the log, confusion twisting her features. That's not possible, she whispered. Someone must have. Used your ID? Another manager scoffed. Do you think we're children? Only you knew your password. Mira flinched. Adrian already knew the truth. Her password had been written on a sticky note under her keyboard. He saw it the first day, small, neat handwriting. She wrote it there because she didn't trust her memory. Because she thought no one would ever bother looking at her desk long enough to find it. It would have been so easy for someone to steal it. And they did. Someone set her up. Someone framed her. And these wolves were ready to tear her apart to save their own skins. The head manager leaned back, crossing his arms. There's a board meeting in an hour. If you don't confess, we'll present all evidence against you. Myra's eyes widened in horror. The board? Yes, he said with a cruel smile. And you know what they do to interns who breach confidentiality? Her breath stopped. They'll fire them? They blacklist them, he corrected coldly. No company will hire you again.
Ever.
Even your university will take disciplinary action. Her knees almost buckled. Blacklisted? Her whole career destroyed? Before it even began? Adrian stepped forward abruptly but stopped inches from the glass. If he walked in now as the employee, they'd kick him out. If he walked in now as the CEO, their world would end. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. Mira? She stood there, alone, trying not to break, even when her lips trembled and her hands shook and her hope slowly collapsed. One manager leaned in, voice low and poisonous. Just sign the confession. Save yourself the humiliation. Mira shook her head desperately. And no, I can't confess to something I didn't do. The manager's expression darkened, full of hatred. Then you leave us no choice. He grabbed her arm.
Hard.
Mira gasped softly, pain flickering across her face. That was it. Something inside Adrian snapped so violently he felt it crack through his bones. He pushed the door open. It slammed against the wall. The managers jerked in shock. Mira turned, and the fear in her eyes broke him. Adrian stepped inside slowly, like a storm walking on 2 legs. What? He said, voice low and lethal. Do you think you're doing to her? The head manager glared. Who are you to interfere? This is official business. Adrian's gaze dropped to where the man still held Myra's arm. Let her go, he said, calm but deadly. And if I don't, the manager sneered. Adrian stepped closer, the temperature in the room dropping with every inch. Then I will make sure you're the one answering to the board. The manager scoffed. The board doesn't listen to employees. Oh. Adrian's lips curved in a cold, dangerous smile. They listen to me. Mira blinked, confusion mixing with fear. Why are you talking like that? He didn't look away from the men cornering her. Because I'm done pretending. The room fell silent. Too silent. The managers froze, eyes widening slowly as they realized. His posture, his tone, his authority, his eyes. Those weren't the eyes of a junior employee. Those were eyes that owned the building. Myra's breath caught, her voice trembling. Who are you? Adrian finally turned toward her, softening instantly. You'll know, he whispered, the moment I walk into that boardroom. The managers paled. Adrian stepped in front of Mira, shielding her completely. He wasn't undercover anymore. Not in his heart. Not today. Not while she was being destroyed for something she didn't do. The storm had started. And this time, he was the lightning. The morning he planned to reveal everything, she didn't show up. Ethan arrived early, earlier than any CEO ever should, sitting quietly at the intern desks like he had done for weeks. But the chair beside him, her chair, remained cold, untouched, painfully empty. For the first time in his life, he couldn't focus. He wasn't thinking about profits, the board, or the merger that could change the future of the company. He was thinking about her. Lena, the girl who didn't even know she had stolen the heart of the man who owned the building she worked in. Ethan kept glancing at the elevator door, every ding making his heart jump. But each time, someone else stepped out. Not her. Never her. Something was wrong. He felt it like a physical ache. She was never late. Never. He knew that because he watched her every day, how she arrived 10 minutes early, how she always greeted the janitor first, how she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, how she whispered, "Let's do this," as if giving herself courage before walking into the day. But today, nothing. Ethan's unease turned into full-blown fear when he checked her supervisor's sheet. Intern absent. No call. The words punched him harder than any boardroom attack ever had. Ethan stood up so fast the chair almost fell. He didn't care. He didn't even realize the entire department had turned to watch the new employee acting like a man with everything to lose. He rushed to the elevator, hit the button, and the second the doors closed, he pulled out his real phone, the one no employee had seen him use. He dialed security. "This is Chairman Ethan Blackwell. I need you to run a check on intern Lena Hart. Immediately.
Now."
There was silence on the other end. They weren't used to this tone from him. Not panic. Not desperation. Not fear. Within minutes, information came in. Not her address. Not her contact. Her emergency number. It belonged to the hospital. A coldness swept through Ethan's veins. Hospital?
Why?
What happened? He didn't wait for an explanation. He didn't wait for the driver. He didn't wait for his assistant. He didn't wait for his cover to be protected. He ran. Down the stairs. Out the back exit. Into the street. A CEO racing like a madman while workers blinked in confusion, wondering why the new guy was sprinting like the world was collapsing. By the time he burst into the hospital lobby, he was breathless, sweating, wild-eyed. A powerful man reduced to nothing more than someone terrified of losing the one person who made him feel alive again. "Lena Hart," he gasped. "Where is she? What happened?" The nurse looked up, startled. "And you are..." He froze. What was he supposed to say? Her coworker? Her friend? Her boss? Her hidden CEO admirer who had disguised himself just to be near her? He clenched his jaw. "I'm someone who needs to see her," he said, voice low, cracking more than he liked. The nurse studied him for a second, his trembling hands, the fear in his eyes.
She softened.
"She's in room 407. But she's..." Ethan didn't wait. He ran again, heart pounding louder than his footsteps. When he reached the door, he stopped. He had faced hostile takeovers, criminal competitors, billion-dollar negotiations, but nothing had ever scared him as much as the thought of seeing her hurt. He pushed the door open, and his world shattered. Lena lay on the hospital bed, pale, still fragile. A small cut on her forehead. An oxygen tube. A heartbeat monitor that beeped steadily, but each beep felt like it was stabbing him. He approached slowly, like she was made of glass. His entire chest tightened. She looked breakable.
Soft.
Innocent. And it killed him that he hadn't been there. She fainted on the bus. A nurse explained quietly behind him. Extreme exhaustion. And we found out she hasn't been eating properly. Ethan's fists clenched so hard his knuckles cracked.
Why?
Why hadn't she eaten? He had seen her grab small things for lunch. Tea, a half sandwich, sometimes nothing. He thought she was busy. He thought she was stressed like other interns. He didn't think she was struggling. Truly struggling. A CEO who could give her the world had let her go hungry. Guilt hit him like a truck. He sat beside her, slowly, trembling. He brushed a strand of hair off her forehead with fingers that were far too gentle for a man known as the cold-blooded CEO. "You should have told someone," he whispered. "You should have told me." But she didn't even know who he really was. He wasn't supposed to care this much. He wasn't supposed to feel like this. But he did. He had the urge to pull her into his arms and never let go. To feed her. To protect her. To tell her she'd never struggle again. That she'd never have to face a single hardship alone. But he couldn't. Not yet. He swallowed hard. He couldn't keep lying. Not when she was lying here, because of exhaustion. Not when he cared too much to stay in the shadows. He took her hand gently, carefully, like holding something precious. "Lena," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm done pretending. When you wake up, I'll tell you everything. No more disguises. No more lies. I'll tell you who I am. And I'll tell you why I can't stop thinking about you." Her fingers twitched lightly, as if trying to respond. Ethan's heart cracked open. He leaned closer, whispering one last promise against her hand. "I'm not letting you go again." And for the first time, he wasn't the cold CEO. He was just a man terrified of losing the girl he had fallen in love with at first sight.